are good members, good candidates who have lost their seats or their ambition, and I'm sorry for that.
There's no reason to think that we won't disappear over time if we don't get our act together. That's how serious this challenge is for the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The Liberal Party is in a world of pain, shattered by their worst election defeat.
We alienated women, we offended public servants, we offended multicultural communities, we insulted people who live in the inner cities. It was almost as if we were running out of new people to offend.
Australians actually said, we've been trying to tell you and you're not listening, so now we need to send you a very, very strong message.
Have you hit rock bottom?
I think the answer is no, there's further for us to go.
The coalition split for the first time in decades.
I don't take a backward step in putting the National Party's best interests on the table in the Australian Parliament.
Within days, they were ready to reconcile.
I had a brief meeting with Susan Lee and she made an offer.
There are also deep divisions inside the Liberal Party.
Will the party unify now behind Susan Lee?
Well, I guess that is the hope.
The question now, can the party of Howard and Menzies ever get back into government?
Our first task is to make sure we are listening to the Australian people.
Is that a concession that there wasn't enough listening to Australian voters over the last term?
Clearly, we weren't listening well enough.
Peter Dutton sidelined Jacinta. He refused to talk about culture.
I think Peter was instinctually very much in the right place. One way or another, we weren't able to bring it home.
The people you have to persuade to vote for you live in the centre ground of Australian politics. And if you spend your time in an echo chamber of far right-wing opinion, you're never going to get them.
Some people think the Liberal Party should lean into some of these culture wars.
Well, there are some people who say that, and I think they're nuts.
In this episode of Four Corners, we speak to some of the key figures in the now decimated Liberal Party room. This is a crisis about the party's diminishing appeal to Middle Australia. They're fighting for the party's heart and soul in a contest that could redefine Australian politics. Winter's come early for the Liberals.
Nothing is for certain in this world, and big businesses and great companies fail all the time. I think we face an existential crisis. If we don't define who we are, what we stand for, and who we're fighting for.
Since they were last in government, the party has lost more than 30 lower house seats.
2022, there was a lot of anger directed at us, and that you could feel it.
It's good to be back in Parliament, Senator.
Nothing to say. Enjoy your day.
Shell-shocked MPs are meeting for the first time since the electoral wipeout that left them without a leader.
Feeling confident today?
Looking forward to a Liberal Party room meeting.
Look at this. Fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news.
The big news in the party room is the defection of Jacinta Nampijinpa Price. Her sudden switch to the Liberal Party angered the Nationals.
Jacinta's done enormous damage to her reputation, hasn't spoken to the party, hasn't spoken to her colleagues in Canberra about this.
Angus, I've been a fighter all my life.
The decision to run with Angus Taylor to lead the party.
We have such passion for this country, for our party.
Upset some Liberals too.
Angus Taylor has insulted every Liberal woman by saying, look, none of you are quite up to the job. I've had to go and recruit someone else.
Do you think it was wrong to think that you can go for a position in the Liberal Party without having been in the party room?
I think there's a way of doing things and there's a natural order to the way the parliamentary party runs itself. So it's always a challenge making transitions across. There was frustration, no question.
Well, good morning. The Liberal Party has met and we have determined that the new leader of our Liberal Party is Susan Ley.
Congratulations.
How does it feel to be the first female leader of the Liberal Party, Susan?
Is it worth the switch, Senator Price?
Making comments in due course.
It is time to step up, regroup and rebuild for the Australian people.
You decided not to run for leader. Why not?
Timing is really important in political life, and the most important thing to me is my marriage and my children, and I need to provide leadership to the Liberal Party in whatever form that takes.
The provisional member for Goldstein, Tim Wilson, is the only Liberal likely to win back a seat from a Teal independent. Do you have leadership ambitions?
What I have is ambitions for this country. I have ambitions for my party to do better, to win, and so I absolutely have ambition to make sure that they steer the future of this country, and I'm going to do that unapologetically and resolutely in at least this next 3 years.
The party's own polling showed Peter Dutton was deeply unpopular with many voters, particularly women.
Australians in their political leaders are looking for people who are authentic, warm and competent. And because of that sort of stoic style, he never came across as warm. And also, I'm sure there were some people who said, well, what don't we know? So there was a question about authenticity. But as someone who had the privilege of serving with him in Parliament, he was a warm person, he was an authentic person, and he was quite clearly competent.
The persona of Peter, or what the media portrayed of Peter, was done over a number of years. And by the time we got to the election campaign, that was pretty solidified. You can see it in the images of him that are used for stories, in the lighting that's used, you know, in interviews. All of this combined, it ultimately created a persona that wasn't the true Peter.
But he's responsible for his image too, right? That toughness came back to bite him, didn't it?
I guess the portfolios that he had over a long time and the tough decisions he had to make did play a part in that. You ask a question about Peter and the unpacking of the election campaign. We should look at how our leaders are perceived and communicated about within the party, and perhaps the party and the campaign machine should have done some work on this a lot earlier than what was done.
The alarm bell sounded for me before the campaign. The first jarring note for me was when we said that we wouldn't support the idea of Australia being engaged in an international peacekeeping force for Ukraine, if there was one. And I thought to myself, that's odd. I mean, we have always been the party that's been proactive about upholding the international rule of law. Defence is one of our strong suits. And I also thought that is not what John Howard would have said. And I thought that it was so off-brand.
Many Liberals are angry about the way Peter Dutton and his office developed policy before the election. During the campaign, shadow ministers had policies rejected or announcements put off with little notice. How would you describe the campaign that the Liberal Party ran?
I think it was very centralised, and I think there was a lot of information that the Australian people had to process in a very short space of time. So in short, we had a communications problem.
Andrew Hastie wanted to release a more detailed defence policy.
It became very difficult to talk about defence during the campaign without a policy.
Were you making it clear we've got to get a detailed defence policy out?
Well, I just assumed that we were going to announce it in the first week or two, and then it blew out to the week of Anzac Day, for whatever reason, which I...
Did you ever get an answer on why?
It hasn't been explained yet, and we would have liked to have had a lot more detail a lot sooner. There's no question about that.
Did you feel like you were banging your head against a wall?
There was a level of frustration, yes.
I'm very proud of the education policy that we delivered, but unfortunately the policy was buried and we only had the opportunity to announce a few measures.
Who buried it?
I don't know. It was done by campaign headquarters the Thursday night before the election. My media release was withdrawn and a lot of incredible hard work by my team and many others right across the coalition unfortunately didn't see the light of day. There were too many policies that were left on the cutting room floor, and I think that was a really big problem, not just in education, despite the very good work of many shadow ministers, too many taxation policies that were not pushed forward, housing policy delivered on the run, a defence policy looking like an afterthought.
We support flexible working arrangements, but we don't support the fear campaigns put out by the Prime Minister. Home ownership is so critically important.
I mean, we're saving like mad, but it doesn't look like we'll get there in the near future.
We can make Australia great again, that we can bring Australia back to its former glory.
People, including women, including young people, didn't know what our policies were. The policies were out the door just too late for Australians more broadly to understand what we were selling, what we were pitching to them. Why would they be voting for us?
Our key policy of cheaper fuel. We announced it, and it wasn't sort of for another 4 or 5 days that we had collateral that we could use on social media, or free-to-air newspapers, and the like. It was just nuts that we didn't have that sort of material ready to go. Something went off the rails, and I think it was centred in campaign headquarters. We were, frankly, in a very competitive position at the start of 2025, and that completely evaporated to the point where we are at an historic low as an opposition. And I think there are some people who might want to consider their futures as a result of that.
Is this the worst election campaign you've ever seen?
I've seen a number of really bad election campaigns. This was among the worst, certainly, but I think the problems weren't just about the election campaign. I think that the Liberal Party became, or at least was allowed itself to be seen to have become a lot narrower. That the people it was addressing were a smaller and smaller group of Australians. And we were unsympathetic to very important constituencies.
Like what constituencies?
Well, we alienated women, particularly women who wanted to work from home. We offended public servants. We offended multicultural communities, particularly with this announcement that went nowhere about a referendum on dual citizens. We insulted people who live in the inner cities. We didn't really have an offering for young people, particularly students. We offended other minority groups as well. It was almost as if we were running out of new people to offend.
Was the leader, Peter Dutton, part of that problem?
Well, I'm not going to criticise Peter Dutton personally. Having taken the Liberal Party to its worst ever defeat, plainly, as he acknowledged himself on election night, he bears a share of the responsibility. It's a shared responsibility with everyone involved. I mean, I was handing out Liberal how-to-vote cards on a polling booth on Saturday afternoon, and the Labor Party person there was handing out Labor Party how-to-vote cards with the message, vote Labor for lower taxes. And I thought, for goodness sake, that is, it broke my heart.
Does it worry you that you've come across as a bit of a nasty party?
I think that we have a long way to go yet so that we are appealing to aspirational Australians. We want to be the party of choice for aspirational Australians. And it is important that they understand where our policies come from. And policies are ultimately an outward expression of a party's values.
Some people think that your campaign wasn't right-wing enough.
Well, I think they're wrong.
Why are they wrong, though? They say you didn't fight for values.
I think we did very much demonstrate what our values are, but I think what we did was we focused on the wrong things when we were demonstrating those values. If we focused on our economic credentials, if we focused on making Australia a better and more prosperous country, returning and restoring living standards in a more meaningful way, then I think we would have connected with people.
There are competing narratives as to how the party should rebuild. One view is the Liberals must return to the political centre if they ever want to form government again.
Is it your objective to take the Liberal Party back towards the middle ground of politics in a more moderate way?
Our Liberal Party reflects a range of views from all walks of life that are welcome in our party room, and that is one of our great strengths. But I do believe that government is ultimately formed in the sensible centre.
The other view within the party is that despite the botched campaign, the Liberals should not fundamentally change course or shy away from controversial topics.
Whenever Peter said there'd be one flag, not three, when he said that we needed education, not indoctrination, when he said that he found all these welcomes to country and acknowledgements of country overdone, I think there was a surge of support for him.
The answer is not to move to the centre, but to move forward as one united team, continuing to bring together classical Liberals and Conservatives in our great party. And that's a very important job, and that is the best and most important way forward for our party.
Victorian Senator Sarah Henderson strongly believes the party had been on the right track under Peter Dutton before the campaign began.
In January this year, we were at a high. Peter Dutton had got us into a winnable position. He prosecuted the importance of standing up for community safety, standing up against the anti-Semitism crisis in our country. He was very, very strong on national security and, of course, on the cost of living. But I don't know what happened, but when we started to just talk about one thing, which was the cost of living, all of those values that Peter espoused, which was so important to so many Australians, were no longer being talked about, and I think that was a mistake.
The people you have to persuade to vote for you are the people who didn't vote for you last time but are open to persuasion. And those people live in the centre ground of Australian politics. And if you spend your time drinking your own political bathwater and only living in an echo chamber of far right-wing opinion, you're never going to get them.
Some people think the Liberal Party should lean into some of these culture wars, that in fact Peter Dutton didn't go into enough of them. I've seen this critique.
Well, there are some people who say that, and I think they're nuts.
Now, positions have been advertised that include those required for cultural diversity and inclusion advisor positions. Such positions, as I say, do nothing to improve the lives of everyday Australians.
Before the official campaign started, Peter Dutton gave a speech where he talked about getting rid of diversity positions in the public service. There were other key moments, basically having a government efficiency role.
Yeah.
What did you think when you heard about those?
I just thought it was unnecessary. I think that was driven by what I'd call, fairy floss politics, where we see something working well overseas, why don't we grab it and bring it to Australia? And look, I just don't, I didn't think it would be unpopular, but I thought it was it was easy politics, high calorie, low nutrition politics.
I think there is going to be a near revolution that comes with the Trump administration in relation to a lot of the woke issues that might be fashionable in universities and at the ABC.
In 22 and 25, for whatever reason, we ended up in cultural issue territory, which was not healthy for us.
You're talking about culture wars, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm talking about culture wars. I mean, look, a classic example would be climate change. If you're talking about climate change as a moral issue, and by the way, I'm quoting Tony Abbott here, if climate change is a moral issue, we're losing votes. If it's an economic issue, we're winning votes. If we're talking about coal versus nuclear versus renewable versus whether it's even happening at all, then you're in a culture war scenario, and it's like, yes, our opponents love that issue. Why would we give our opponents what we want? And for so many years, that's what we've done.
I don't think that everyday Australians are particularly interested in culture wars. People have abandoned us in the cities because our messaging doesn't resonate with them. And they haven't gone to the right. They voted for Labor and the Teals because what we're selling them isn't aligned with them.
The man tasked with selling one of the most contentious Liberal policies is the party's new deputy leader. Some of Ted O'Brien's colleagues think it's time they dumped the policy to build government-funded nuclear power plants. I've spoken to many people that say it was a fizzer in the electorate. Do you accept it?
I accept that every single policy that we took to the election, including our policy for nuclear energy, needs to be reviewed. The Australian people did not buy into what we were offering.
So you don't see it as a final say from voters on the issue of nuclear power?
Our job right now is to make sure we are listening to the Australian people and being very open about all of our policies.
Given the electoral result, though, if you were to keep nuclear and go to the next election with it, which I accept is 3 years away, that's a gift to the Labor Party, isn't it?
Honestly, right now, the Australian people have said to the coalition that they didn't believe that they saw in us a good enough reason to put us into government. Now, the reasons behind that is what we need to really understand. What we can't afford to do is take the election result and then rush to conclusions.
The focus has now turned to lifting the decades-old ban on nuclear energy in Australia.
I think nuclear should be part of our mix, but I think the first incremental step should be to remove the moratorium. And if we remove the moratorium, then we should let capital markets do their work. And so if there is the potential for nuclear power in this country, we'll see people invest in that.
You want to dump the nuclear policy, don't you?
I just think it was going to be hard enough as it was. So my answer to you is yes, because it was going to be difficult to negotiate, even if we'd started on it on Monday, if we'd won the election, right? Hard to deliver. 3 years into the future, it's going to be even harder.
It must be said that the Labor Party told a lot of lies about the nuclear policy, and it picked a costing which was at the upper end of a very wide range of estimates from a not very reliable source. I think there was both good and bad in the nuclear policy. What it did when it was announced is it gave the opposition an alternative point of view to debate the government against Chris Bowen's effectively renewables-only policy. And I think it captured the public's attention. So I'm not saying that it was a bad decision, but I think we lost the argument.
We will not be re-entering a coalition agreement with the Liberal Party. This is one of the hardest political decisions of my life.
The junior coalition partner pushed hard for nuclear to remain official policy.
Why, in this day and age, as an industrial economy, we should not avail ourselves of the backyard we have of uranium.
After 38 years in coalition, the Nationals walked away.
Susan's got a big job ahead of her. They are going on a journey of rediscovery, and this will provide them the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Well done.
Thank you.
We offered to work constructively with the Nationals, and we asked for that respect in return. I really believe that the coalition is stronger together.
What Susan Lee did on becoming leader was throw the entire coalition policy platform in the air, saying it was all to be reviewed. That was done without consultation with the coalition partner. It has been a significant breach of the relationship. I hope we can come together as a coalition in our national interest and the interest of our country. But if we can't, well, the National Party is absolutely prepared to do our job on behalf of the people that sent us to Canberra.
We were never going to have policy decisions settled within a week. So I do feel like it was a bit of a contrived set of reasons that they walked away from us.
I back Susan on her approach, and I am very disappointed that the Nationals walked, I think, so quickly away from the coalition agreement. I understand their passion and their commitment for the policies they wanted to see in the coalition agreement. I have a lot of support for those policies as well. I share a lot of those really strong views. The only way forward to, frankly, get rid of a terrible government, a government which is driving our nation off a cliff, is to unite very, very quickly with the Nationals and to be one very, very strong centre-right force as an alternate government going forward.
Whether they dump or keep the promise to reach net zero by 2050 will be one of the major battles inside both parties. All right, let me ask you this question. Net zero is on the table. How on earth are you going to win back city seats if you're revisiting getting to net zero by 2050, which is a key climate goal?
Right now, no decision has been made. No commitment that we previously had has been thrown out. No commitment we previously had has been locked down.
Do you think you should stay committed to net zero?
Well, our party position is that we are committed to net zero by 2050 until that's obviously reviewed and stays or doesn't stay. If you are serious about net zero, then you have to get serious about nuclear.
What's the deadline for sorting all of this out?
Sooner rather than later. I think people take a dim view of politicians talking about themselves. We're serious professional politicians, but the decision of the room was to go.
Just days after the dramatic split, New South Wales faced record floods. The Nationals were now talking about reconciling with the Liberal Party.
I had a brief meeting with Susan Lee and she made an offer. This is a positive step forward, one in which we've always said we'd be productive and constructive. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Most Australians believe climate change is real, and we have to deliver energy policies that ensure that we reach our net zero targets and that we deliver stable power and power that is as cheap as possible.
Do you think that policy should be reviewed, your commitment to net zero by 2050?
The question of net zero, again, that's a straitjacket that I'm already getting out of. The real question is, should Australian families and businesses be paying more for their electricity? And should we allow this sort of hypocrisy at the heart of our economy to continue, whereby we sell coal and gas to India and China and we deny it to our own people? That's the question that I think we need to answer.
After a chaotic week, the Liberals agreed in principle to the Nationals' demands on nuclear power, supermarket divestiture, a regional future fund and better mobile phone coverage. The details are still to be negotiated. Is David Littleproud's leadership now more tenuous? I mean, there were people who were speaking out saying you need to sort out this breakup, and within a day he's put on ice the breakup. Where does that leave him?
Well, I think David has taken and led the party in a very difficult period of time. He had a Liberal Party that said they weren't going to respect our policy positions. And so David took that to the party room, and as a collective we made that decision. He doesn't make captain's calls.
It's a difficult night for Liberals and Nationals around the country, as nights like this always are.
At the 2022 election, some statistics stood out. A majority of women of all ages favoured Labor over the Liberal Party. Just 28% of Liberal MPs and senators were women. In its review of that election, the party declared it could not survive if it failed to attract younger members, more ethnically diverse members, and, crucially, more women. Does the Liberal Party have a problem with women?
We don't have a problem, but we do have multiple issues. It is going to continue to be a revolving door of female members of parliament if the culture doesn't change.
Western Sydney is one of our...
Shadow Cabinet Minister Melissa McIntosh holds the marginal seat of Lindsay. It's one of just a handful of Liberal electorates left in Greater Sydney.
Historically, women are in marginal seats, and it's been like that for a very long time. The height of the Howard days in 1996, there were many women, but they were all in marginal seats. Equality is one of our beliefs. We need to make sure that we are communicating that with women so they can get into the party, they can hold key positions within the party, they can put their hand up for pre-selection in seats that are winnable. Structural change needs to happen within the party. We need to encourage women. They need to feel like part of something, and that's going to take time.
Should go and fill a car up.
I think so.
Fill a truck up. What do you reckon? You're paying 25 cents a litre.
The campaign was so blokey. I can imagine why women would think, well, what's this got to do with me? A guy pulling up in a big truck, not a family car, but a big truck filling up with petrol.
We're in 2025. How could it be that the ranks of women in the Liberal Party are so abysmally low?
That's such an important question, and I think if we had the answer to that question, we wouldn't actually be having this conversation.
Do you need quotas?
I think we need to look at everything at the moment, and I think quotas as a circuit breaker in the current environment, given that we are at this crisis point, is something that we need to look at for a period of time to ensure that we get the balance of our representatives right, because relying on the organic growth hasn't had anywhere near the outcome that it's needed to.
We have to have a Liberal Party that respects modern Australia, that reflects modern Australia, and that represents modern Australia.
Susan and Ted will do a fine job of leading our party. They're people I consider friendly colleagues. I think she'll be a good leader, and she's also made history as the first female leader of the parliamentary party. So we can turn this ship around. I have faith. It's a huge job for Susan, and that's why we're going to be supporting her and getting behind her.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
She's a shining light for us now, and she is taking up a position in a historic way. And it brings hope and it brings optimism, and as a female colleague, I'll do anything I can to ensure that we are bringing other women, particularly young women, along with us, and we are forming policies that do appeal to women. But we are a broad church, not only in ideology, but a broad church in ensuring that we appeal to Australians more broadly. And that's the work that we're going to have to undertake in the next 3 years.
Will the party unify now behind Susan Lee?
Well, I guess that is the hope. I'll be supporting, the leadership, obviously, because that's what we have to do if we want to do a good job in opposition.
Is it going to be hard for Susan Lee to be the candidate in 3 years?
Well, I don't think so. I'm delighted that Susan Lee was elected. If people care about the Liberal Party's success rather than, their own factional games, they should give her a go.
There's no doubt in my mind that we can be successful at the election.
The Liberals will now review how the party failed so catastrophically at this election. The Liberal Party kept saying the polling was better internally, but I want you to be really honest with me here. Did you know that the campaign was just wrong? Did you feel it in your guts during the campaign?
In varying degrees in different seats, you could actually see things shifting. And again, it wasn't consistent across those. But yeah, there was a significant difference at the beginning of the campaign towards the end.
You could tell people just didn't like the Liberal Party.
They weren't interested in hearing what we had to say. They disconnected from us. So I wouldn't even say they didn't like us, they weren't even listening to us anymore.
Flawed polling has been blamed for the false confidence the party carried all the way to election day.
I thought, they must have polling showing that, there's a huge movement of votes.
Internal polling overestimated the coalition's chances. They targeted safe Labor seats in the outer suburbs while not doing enough to protect their own marginal electorates. Four Corners has learnt the opposition leader had polling presented to him on the Thursday before the election that showed 3% swings to the Liberals in marginal Labor-held seats. One party source said it was like flying with faulty instruments.
One of the greatest failures of the Liberal Party in this whole election campaign was the swing against us in Victoria, despite the headwinds that the Labor Party is facing there, and the fact that we lost even more seats in WA. It was incompetent. That result, more so than any other, speaks to we need to actually go back to basics here. There is something going completely wrong.
It's clear, obviously, that the referendum has not been successful, and I think that's good for our country.
Some in the party believe a significant mistake was made before the campaign began. The Liberal Party's own pollster has said they overestimated the number of so-called Labor defectors to the coalition. They wrongly assumed those who voted no in the Voice referendum were more likely to favour the coalition at the election.
We made decisions based on bad polling that was somehow so fatally flawed that we ended up losing seats we did not even think we were going to come near losing. It was a disaster, there's no two ways about it. The campaign was, from beginning to end, sadly, a failure, and the numbers bear that out.
We thought that somehow the result in the Voice was a precursor to a massive first-term defeat, when they were very unrelated. I think that's quite clear. It was a big win for us at the time, but that didn't mean that people were going to vote for us on the more substantive question on who they want to govern this country.
Tomorrow, we must seek a new way forward with the same optimism.
There was plenty of downside for the Prime Minister, but the upside was that people also saw that he was prepared to politically die for something. It was a pretty big repudiation, but people also saw that he was prepared to go hard for an idea even if he was going to fail. And I think you can't quantify that, but I think it reflected that people thought he had some convictions.
What's next for you, Mr. Dutton?
Thank you.
After such a resounding defeat, many Australians are now asking, what exactly does the Liberal Party stand for? This has been obviously a really bruising period for the Liberal Party.
Yes.
Have you hit rock bottom?
Look, I think the answer is no. There's further for us to go, but that's necessary. And so I think we've put off a lot of arguments for a long time, and it's time to have it out. And I think when we do have those arguments, yeah, it's going to look very messy.
Blue, traditional Liberal heartland seats that are all going teal. And one thing you can also note about that, it's all going to be women.
3 years ago, the Liberals lost their urban heartland to teal independence.
My thoughts tonight are with all my colleagues who have lost their seats. My heart bleeds for you.
Our climate has changed.
Do you feel like Peter Dutton tried to win back those teal seats?
No, I do not. I think he wanted to. I don't think the Liberal Party tried.
The Liberal Party has lost a series of seats over a prolonged period of time, and it has not grappled with, one, why did we lose them? And then two, how do we identify the specific challenges of how to win them back?
Tim Wilson sees the Bayside Melbourne seat of Goldstein as ground zero for the Liberal Party.
I'm genuinely very proud to say that we are pleased to accept that we have won the seat of Goldstein back for the Liberal Party.
He defied political gravity, promising to be a different kind of Liberal.
In all of our campaign speeches, our messaging, it was very clear about the fact that we were going to be bold, we were going to be confident. We understood the national campaign was not going to help us. And that's because the national campaign was a Liberal-Labor contest, and we didn't fit within that. We had to assume that on the balance of probabilities, it was going to drag on us.
Why would it drag on you?
Because the focus was not going to be on electorates like ours. They were focused on other seats. People were saying abandon the teal seats, all this sort of stuff. It's like, OK, fine, they're not going to design a campaign to help us. There were certainly times in the lead up to the campaign where I said to some shadow ministers, more policy, please. And that's what I was hearing from voters. We've got some things, nuclear being a clear example. Again, I don't think you've told the whole story, but it's good. I can tell the rest of the story at a community level. We should be doing more of that. We should be more bold and ambitious.
Do you see yourself as the future of the party now?
I see my role as being part of the future of the party. I have gone back to an electorate who has handed my ass to me on a platter, turned around and said, yep, I want to run again. I want the great privilege, and I'm going to go on. There'll be lessons to be learned, but we are going to build a better community and a better Australia together. And the results are there.
I think we met some weeks ago.
Yes.
Tim Wilson believes his approach in Goldstein must be replicated in every major city.
There is no pathway for the Liberal Party to win back government without urban electorates in Australia's capital cities. It is that simple.
We will never govern again unless we get people in the cities to vote for us. That's where the vast majority of Australians live. If people in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane aren't going to vote for us, then we'll be sitting in an opposition party room in ever-diminishing numbers for a very long time.
We'll rebuild from here. We'll do that because we know our values, we know our beliefs, and we'll always stick to them.
The Liberal Party faces an existential crisis. How it's resolved will determine whether it will form government again.
There's two ways to look at rebuilding. You can look at it having a brawl and there's a victor, or you can have it where somebody just puts forward a new way that takes everybody forward together. I'm much more in the latter camp because, yes, there will inevitably be disputes and disagreements, and there are obviously grievances of the past, but it's really what's the way forward. That's what matters.
Election day was catastrophic for us. We lost some outstanding members of parliament. We lost our leader, we lost shadow cabinet members. We lost people that had actually connected really well with their communities, and yet those communities voted against them. Our message didn't resonate with everyday Australians.
Australians, whether you're seventh generation, Indigenous Australian or a migrant, we should be speaking to all of them, but particularly migrant Australians. I think there's a rich story there, and it's funny, during this year I got asked, what do you care about as a politician? And I have my 3 stars. I care about families, homes and schools or education. And I was with some Chinese Australians and they said, Andrew, you're basically Asian. They're Asian values. And that's the point. They're values that speak to everyone regardless of what your background is, because they're aspirational. There's no reason to think that we won't disappear over time if we don't get our act together. That's how serious this challenge is for the Liberal Party.